So the first thing you'll notice on that grading rubric is there are a couple of different aspects to it. It's broken up into 4 different pieces. So there's an overview. So you're going to write a very detailed 1.5 to 2 pages overview of the case that you've downloaded from Harvard Business Cases, but written from the project management viewpoint. So you're the project manager on the case. You're doing that overview from that case point. You have a section for negatives. So in other words, what went wrong on the project, very detailed. You also have a positives. What went right on the project? So negatives and a positives. And the part then, as you scroll down a little bit, this idea of synthesis, we're taking that different. So what would you have done differently as a project manager? What would be the next steps as a project manager on this? So this is the one you can use all those skills and things you've learned in business classes, this class, other courses, and you can actually add content. So each section should be about 1.5 to 2 pages. And I know you're going, oh my goodness, that's going to be a giant project. If you break it down into sections, it really will come out fairly quickly, I think, for most of you when you do that. So think about those ideas of what would I have done different during the project? Is there a next step in the project? And by interjecting yourself, so you have to do a little bit of role playing, you become that project manager on here. So go back in and look at those things you've already done. Because you already have a couple of pieces that you've done with this that you can utilize for additional resources. So you did the risk management, and that should give you some ideas. What went right? What went wrong? How can I apply that in there? So altogether, in the entire class, 200 points are on these writing assignments that we've done. Because we added the risk assessment in there, this is worth 80 points altogether now. So it's a substantial number of points, but I think that it should be fairly easy to do. And actually in class, what we'll do on Thursday, make sure I have the right day because I'm losing track after the weekends I've had, that we will actually have all day in class as a writing time for this project where you can ask questions and we can work on it here. So you should get a pretty good start this week. It is actually due next Thursday the 11th. However, there's a couple of pieces that come into that make that day. If you're taking other 8-week classes, that is probably the end of that other 8-week classes. So the earlier you start on it, and yes, I know it's homecoming week and homecoming weekend, and there's a lot of activities, but the sooner you get that done, the better off you are. The other thing that comes into play is that there is a final next week for this class. And for those of you that are in class, we are doing it on Thursday the 11th at 2 o'clock. So, what are we doing? Tuesday, we are finishing up this, and you are doing the practice exam on Tuesday. So Tuesday, and we will talk about that. So the final has 2 sections. So there is a practice exam worth 30 points, and you can take that as many times as you want to take it. It scores the highest version of whatever you take. Now, as I say that, though, there is one small caveat in that it is taken from a pool of questions. So it's not 30 questions and you get the identical same 30 the next time. They're very similar, but it gives you a flavor of what's in there. So you should be able to do very well on that. And I think I've actually booked it out for like 3 hours to do 30 questions. So Tuesday is a really good day to do that. We can do that in class. We can ask questions. We can look at it. And then Thursday will be the in-class final. Those online students will have, actually I believe we start at Wednesday. I'd have to look. Some point in the day, so they actually have 2 days at some point to take that final. Because I know sometimes their schedules are a little different, but that's what we're looking at for that. So the only new content we have is there is a discussion board due this week. And that discussion board, actually, I see several people have already posted. So we are looking at something called Agile, and I've added some additional resources in here, because our book doesn't do a lot of content about that. So I added a couple of interesting ones in there. So this one is a website that's got a pretty good comparison of it. And then I have a video, and we'll show that one up. I'll cut the recording here because it doesn't seem to record the video up onto online very well. And then I have a link for those of you that are interested in this, a link to a free test you can do very similar to the CAPM. So we're always looking at what ways can we set you guys apart from other college students graduating with a business degree. When you guys graduate, there's 20,000 college students, all of you out there with a business degree. What makes you different? And one of the problems we have, we're Peru State College. Here on campus, you're very proud of that. But the reality is you go out and you move to North Carolina and you're in Charlottesville or wherever you end up, they're not going to know about Peru State, that we don't get that name recognition. We're not Harvard, we're not Duke, we're not any of those name brand schools. So we look at what kind of things can we do that you can grab to set you apart. So that's one of the things we encourage, things like minors. So if you don't have a minor, we yell at you and keep harping and going, you should get a minor, something to set you apart from other students. We try to talk you into doing things that set you apart, because it is that ability to go out and land those jobs. And what we love, and in fact I had 2 students this week, former students, the best part about this job is when you get a former student who emails and says, here, look at this success I'm doing. I'm doing this, it's great. And, oh, by the way, I've decided I want to go to grad school. Would you write me a letter of recommendation? Sweet, yes. Now, those kinds of things. How do we get you out there? How do we get you successful? And in both students that wanted letters of recommendation when they left here, and there's some of you in this class that I'm looking at, are saying, I will never go to graduate school. And then you're a couple years from now, you'd be like, maybe I was wrong about that, and I need those grad credits, or I need that. So I have a couple of pieces up there for that. So this week should be not horrible. If you're working on the paper, you should be able to do it. The best model to get things, you're going to need some external resources. So, for example, since we're talking about Waterfile versus Agile, if you have decided that this project was done using Waterfile methods, and you think, maybe part of my suggestion in the what would I have done different, I would use Agile, you might even link to a resource that listed the differences between them. And you could use something like this link here. Now, again, it's not a peer-reviewed link, but it does have information in it. And so you should have a couple of outside resources on this project. I do not have a grading rubric that says if you don't use any external resources, you automatically get a 40%. But to get the best quality in there, you probably are going to need an external resource. So, the other thing I'll mention, because we always run into it, because of the timing of grades and when they need to be turned in, there are no extensions on the final or that final paper on that date. There just simply isn't any way to get those turned in late. Now, if you have a drastic emergency, and I'm very sensitive to that because I'm scared to see what my hospital bills in the last 3 weeks have been, quite frankly. So, if you have, much like we had at our weekend, where my wife ended up in the ER with a gallbladder attack and ended up having to get shipped to Lincoln and go to the hospital, and you're unable to do something, if that happens, you're in a car wreck, we can do an incomplete or we can find a way to work around it. Just let me know what's going on. But if you come up to me on Thursday or you email me and it's 11:55, you say, I just haven't had time because, it was a busy week, probably not much we can do. So just be aware those dates are kind of inflexible when we hit the end of the semester. So there is, next week, the other thing that I am asking for, if you look at our discussion boards, there is a last week 8 discussion board. And that last one is kind of a reflective, what could we do different? So if one thing I do know, so I got kind of handled this course and said this is the book that we're going to use. I think it's a great book as a reference. I'm not sure it's a great book to read or try to understand it. So I am looking for some alternatives and how we can do that. So that part has already been done. The other thing, because this was, as I'm kind of feeding through and trying to figure out how we're going to do this course, the next time we throw that out, everything will be available from week 1 through week 8 all at once. So there's a couple of really quick differences. But I would love to get rid of this as a textbook. It's a great resource and a reference. I'm not sure it's as great as trying to read an actual textbook that's got cases and examples and those kinds of things. So I've been examining all different kinds of materials, trying to see what's out there and what we can do that's fairly affordable. Now, one thing I've ran into, and some of you guys have already probably ran into this, textbooks have gotten crazy expensive. Has anybody ran into that already? Yeah, especially anything very specialized, it gets a little pricey. So I'm looking at a couple of products that are supposedly available with the Cengage Unlimited plan, which actually is kind of a nice touch. So I welcome your feedback. Yes, we do have a course evaluation, but I get this immediately. I actually use this far more than we do that course evaluation. And where I'm on the assessment committee, we're looking at how do we change those course assessments anyway. Because if you don't know, there's a lot of really weird issues with them that we get numbers that are just really all over the place. For example, when you look at those course evaluations, do you guys remember taking one last semester? And the grading scale on most things, it's 1 to 5, so it's a modified Likert scale. So it says 1 to 5, except on our scale system for this quiz, if I said somebody's doing really great, would I put them at a 5 or a 1? A 5. Most people assume higher number is better. However we did this many years ago, take a look at that course evaluation, and the lower number is better. And so every semester we always have that fear that somebody's going to look at that and they're not going to actually read the directions, and they're going to mark this as, hey, a 5, thinking that we've just done some really silly things, and it doesn't really reflect some of maybe the best practices. So we're actually looking at revising that and getting more input from students and better input that actually leads us to changes. So the other thing is there's a lead time, whereas this I get immediately. Those course evaluations can take 6 to 8 weeks sometimes before we see them. By that time, we've already taught another section of the class, so it's really hard to change anything. And so I know everybody hates discussion boards universally. Does anybody in here love discussion boards? JC, just, only because you poked her and made her say we. That was him that made that noise? Oh, that's even creepier. I don't even want to comment, but what is your Halloween costume going to be? Okay. So that's our kind of plan of attack for this week and next week. So Tuesday will be a practice review, work on your paper time, great time to finish up those last 2 items. Again, if you're going to take the test 16 times, and I've got a 3-hour window, you're not going to be able to do that all in one class session, but it's a great time to come in and go, hey, I got this question wrong for like the 12th time. Can you explain to me why that's wrong? And it may well be I look at it and go, hey, I screwed up when I made the code key. It could be I need to explain something better. So that practice exam is a good idea. And if you have those questions, and something shows up really weird, I will try to do like a running session where I will then put that up online for the people on off campus can actually see that also. So make sure you have done week 7, the discussion board. Make sure you're working on that project. Make sure you're ready for that test and that practice exam. I like the idea of how that's done, so I think I'm going to probably incorporate that in some other courses. So we'll see how that works. No, you don't like the idea of practice versus real? Do you just not like the idea of a test at all? Yeah, okay. You struggle. You like the idea of the practice, but not the actual graded exam. And interesting, so don't. That sounds great, but it won't work. So you like the idea of the practice, but not graded for points. So all of the points would then, that 100 points would all shift then to the actual exam. Oh. The final project instead of, and in some classes that makes sense. This one we're going to have both. The test is not that bad. It will not kill you. I guarantee that. Everybody will survive. Very similar to the quizzes. Multiple choice. I think there are a few short answer / essay. I cannot control what resources you have available. So yes, you can use the PMBOK guide.